Okay, everyone, well, welcome. I am happy to introduce Michael Lewis, or do you prefer to go by Mike or Michael?
Either one doesn't
Okay,
matter.
we'll go by Mike then. So, Mike is a security guru. Like does all sorts of stuff with just internet security. I've only talked with him briefly about what he does, but it's pretty intense. He's also an entrepreneur. He started his own business. Currently, he works for just another agency doing website security, and he does play the bagpipes. I hope he might be able to actually play a bagpipe solo the rest of the end. If that's all right. Just kidding. just seeing if you're paying attention. No, yeah, totally kidding there. But yeah, so that's Mike Lewis. So he's gonna be talking to us about uh, about website security, why trust in organizations is so important, and and also just entrepreneurship and how we got started. So it's gonna be some pretty great stuff. So Mike, is there anything you'd like to add to that everyone should know about you?
Oh my heavens! I'm getting old, and the older I get, the more I realize I don't know everything. So not much else.
Okay, but you know a lot. That's for sure. That's for sure. So, well, that's awesome. Well, Mike, with that, I'll turn the time over to you. Could you get us started off with just like I don't know, like your kind of like your life story, why you got with entrepreneurship and all of that.
Yeah, sure. Man, my introduction to entrepreneurship was really out of necessity. I'd always thought about I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to do my own thing, but I didn't have the courage to do it. I was working and it was difficult to make that decision to stop a job where I was being paid regularly to start my own business. And so I was working for a company, and I had started with that company in July, and by November that company went out of business, which obviously created a desperate need for me to work and to find another way to make money and to provide for my family. And that was it. That was the catalyst. That's what got me launched into in what I had been already thinking about of starting my own business, but really didn't have, as I said, the courage or I didn't. I don't think that I had the tool set yet to be able to do it. But there I was. I was at this crossroads where I had to decide: am I going to get another job, or is this the time to start my own business? And so that's what I did. I started my own business and started. I had no money, no money whatsoever. I just took what I had, the skills that I had as a technologist and a security professional, a cybersecurity professional, and started doing consulting and started my own business, my own security business and technical business company, which was very difficult, but it was a really good education for me as well because I had to
So,
grow up really fast.
just backing up from that, I know like there's a lot of people out there who just like since they were like I don't know 4 years old, they like were doing lemonade stands and like starting up all these businesses and all of that. Did you like think growing up that like you were going to be an entrepreneur? Like was that something you?
I didn't think of it that way. However, I was one just naturally. I always, growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money. And so whenever, if I wanted something, if I wanted some shoes, some really nice shoes, or if I wanted the latest bike, or if there was something I wanted, I had to go earn it. I had to go get it because my parents didn't have the money to buy me whatever I wanted to have. And so what I did naturally is I would go out and I would look for any job, and I would go to knock on the doors to whatever business to see if there was some odd job I could do for them. So I did have this entrepreneurial mindset, or at least a spirit, but I don't think that I had connected that thinking at some point I want to work for myself. I wish I had, because smart people do that, people like you, Micah. But for me, it was there. I just had not connected that dot when I was younger.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great. I think it's great to know because there's I would even say like me too. Like I never really thought I was going to be an entrepreneur until like just a few years ago. Uh, and so I think it's like really important to understand that like these people who are watching that like you can start being an entrepreneur like anytime. Like you don't have to you know
Mhm.
think that like oh like I wasn't raised in the right household, like I don't have a lot of support, or it's too late for me to start. I think there's always an opportunity. So
Right.
but backing up, so going to like how did you start your first company? Like was it just kind of like started out of the blue? Like did you know it was coming?
No, I didn't. It was out of the blue. Like I said, I had thought about it. I had thought I would like to have my own company, and I always thought about what I would want to do if I had my own company. But I had not put it into action. I had not started to develop it the way it should have been. So I was kind of caught off guard, unfortunately. However, I did have some aspirations, and I had some forethought about what it is that I would like to do if I were to start my own company. And so I'd had those things in my mind and some ideas of those things. But unfortunately, this kind of hit me out of the blue, and so it became a necessity. It became something where I had to act quickly. And like I said, I had no money. I didn't have investors. I didn't have people that were wanting to support me financially or to support me even educationally or technically or from a business perspective. Nothing. I had to take everything I had and I had to scurry and go and try to fill in all the gaps by just doing my own really hard work and study, um, while I was also trying to work and trying to find work. And so that's not the ideal way of doing it. However, if you're a hard worker, and if you really want it, it's something that you can do. It's something you if you're willing to do that. It's definitely possible. But so that's what I did. So I had to fight. I had to start, just getting to work and digging my heels in and go in and learning how to run a business while at the same time trying to generate revenue. And so, it was difficult. It was difficult and scary, definitely scary. And
What was scary
so,
about it?
well, the fear of not making enough money, the fear of not people not wanting you to, not wanting to hire you or not use your service, the fear of being rejected, the fear of just failing in all the different ways. That
Yeah.
fear. But at the same time, quite honestly, and this is the strange thing, and this is the interesting thing, that same fear actually drove me. That same fear made me want to fight hard and to work hard and to really push as hard as I can to make sure that I didn't fail, or if I failed, which I did, that it wasn't often and it wasn't too much. Because one thing that you have to really get used to is failure, because failure is a very natural part of entrepreneurship and of any type of business. You're going to fail in some certain areas, and so the whole point is trying to reduce the number of failures, and more importantly, learn from those failures and be honest about failure. You look at that and say, well, okay, I didn't do this right. What can I learn from that? And take that and have that become, a foundation, in your effort and in your business, the foundation of that failure, which becomes a competence.
Yeah.
And
So
so I was,
backing up a little bit. Uh, lately we've also talked as a group about like the difference between like entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs, like right. So like the entrepreneurs are the people who actually like generate revenue and actually do stuff. The entrepreneurs are always the one like I had this great idea, but they have fear or something goes wrong, and so they're just like okay, well I'm just
right,
gonna take this easier path or do something that's easier, and they never do anything.
right.
And so, what would you say differentiated yourself from like being like a instead of being like a wantrepreneur and like having fear and uh, the hard times just like giving up and actually being an entrepreneur and actually generating revenue? Like what do you think made you different to actually succeed?
What made me different is the love I have of my family. I wanted to make sure that I could take care of them. they have trust in me. They trust that I'm going to provide for them and take care of them. And so the fear, which is there, you definitely are afraid. It can help you, like it did for me, thankfully. It can help you to put that fight in and not let it distract you and chase you away from it, but to let you know that there is failure and there is fear to this, but let that actually be the burning of the engine and the fuel that pushes and accelerates you forward. Which I'm grateful that is what I chose to do, and I chose to fight hard and to make sure that the trust that people had in me, that I wanted in myself, that I fought for that, and that I didn't allow the fear of failure chase me away from it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're. That's really interesting. Usually when people talk about, the entrepreneurial story, it's like, other factors. But that's really cool that you talk about that. Like it was your fear that like converted into your, I guess like your just drive to get it done. Like that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, that's how it starts out, right? I mean, you're for me personally, I was, especially most entrepreneurs start out, not all, but most entrepreneurs start out, and there's a struggle. There is a certain amount of defeat. There's a certain amount of chaos. There's a certain amount of frustration, and of course, we talked about the fear.
Yeah.
Um, Very few start out where everything is smooth and everything goes well. That just is not reality. And so you have to look at what your personal integrity, your personal um, how you view yourself, your deep belief. And for me, I wanted to succeed for multiple reasons, but the very simplest reason was to survive. I wanted to survive, and I wanted to take care of my family. And then, of course, you build on that, and then that develops into, you can add layers of success and add to the dream and add to the goal of, okay, now I'm surviving, I'm taking care of my family, but I would like to provide in a certain kind of way, and you layer different goals, and you increase, you don't ever stop dreaming and don't ever stop looking forward, and keep raising those sights of success, or the heights of success, and keep driving towards that so that you can continue the acceleration. Um, I think one of the most important parts is you should always be grateful, but never satisfied, and always be humble, but always hungry, always wanting to do more, and always wanting to provide more. So so that's how it started for me, and it was a good experience. It was really difficult, but for all of those reasons, I was able to eventually get to the point where started I started seeing some success, where I was getting clients and starting to earn recurring revenue, and money was coming in, not to make me rich, but to help me provide. And that was like really relaxing, and made me feel like, okay, thank heavens. But like I just said, but there were other goals. I stacked on additional layers of success that I wanted to achieve while being an entrepreneur, and that drove me even more. Um, but one of the things that I know that you guys are teaching, Micah, which I think is outstanding, and I hope that, from what I understand, you guys will be spending a lot of time with this, is about trust. And I don't know if this is a good time to get in that, but for me, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, as a father, as a brother, as a son, I cannot illustrate, I cannot explain, or emphasize enough how important trust is in everything you do, especially in business. Trust is the currency of business, that you're not going to get anywhere without trust. You're going to have a hard time being successful at any business unless, number one, you can be a credible person, so someone that can be trustworthy, someone that someone that a customer or an individual trusts you. At the same time, you also have to extend trust to other people. You have to extend trust to other businesses, to other individuals, and that mutuality, that ability to both be credible and extend trust, is the most critical component to all business. And I firmly believe that. I learned that as a businessman. I learned that through some really good courses that I've taken in business. And one more recently, I'm not sure, Mike, if you've even talked to them about this yet, but by the Franklin Covey Institute, Stephen M. R. Covey, that he talks about the importance of trust in everything that you do, but especially in business. And one thing I wanted to really emphasize, and I hope you're okay if I do this, Micah, but
Yeah, go for it.
one thing I wanted to emphasize in how I see this, how I see my own career, and how I see the success that I've reached was, again, through this trust. But I wanted to kind of talk about the four different areas of trust, because it's important to identify that within yourself. And
Before we dive into that real quick, can I just play devil's advocate? Because yeah, I've actually almost done with that book that you're talking about. I believe you're referencing.
yeah,
And you know, honesty and integrity is that like the is one of like the cornerstone of my character and something I strive for. But just playing devil's advocate for a little bit, like to be honest, like not to be yeah maybe to be honest, like being dishonest is sometimes enticing. You know, it seems like a jump start. It you know if you're caught, it seems like the, you know
right.
best thing, or just like an easy way to get more money, or you know just in the short term. So just playing devil's advocate, what would you tell to someone like in that situation? Is it really worth it?
Well, the easy answer is no, it's not worth it. But I believe firmly that those moments of enticement, those moments where we have that we're at that crossroad, right? We have to decide if we're going to tell the truth or if we're going to not tell the truth. And if we don't tell the truth, we either A, don't get trouble because of something that happened, or B, we can earn a few extra dollars on something because we're not being fully uh, transparent. We're not telling the truth, and therefore there's an opportunity to make a few more bucks on a job or on a contract or whatever it may be. But I can say pretty confidently that somebody will always know. And when you demonstrate integrity and when you demonstrate intent, where you show and demonstrate that you as an individual are going to be honest in all that you do, and you show somebody and you tell somebody, hey, and you tell the truth, on the flip side of that, they know that you could have said something else. They know that you could have said a completely different thing or not told the truth, and that they would have paid you more money, to use that as an example. Now, how do they see you? That you, instead of taking the opportunity to get a few more bucks, to make some more money, you chose to be honest. They will always trust you, always. And yeah, maybe on that particular job or that particular opportunity, maybe you didn't make as much money as you possibly could have. However, the that investment into your credibility, where now that individual or that company sees you as somebody with absolute impeccable credibility, as somebody that they can absolutely trust, the chances of them doing business with you and choosing you to do business with over other people goes up significantly. And you will always have that trust. And here's what's more, they will probably tell others whenever given an opportunity to talk about you or to talk about the work that they do and the work that you provide for that particular company or individual. Um, they'll be happy to say, this person, I can absolutely trust this person. As an entrepreneur, when I started out, I had zero money, no money to market or advertise anything that I did. 100%, 100% of the money that I made came from that individual trusting me. And what's even better is that it came to the point where now I started building a reputation. And so I started getting calls in my business. I started getting phone calls where people called and said, I know a guy who said that you're the person that I should talk, you're the person that I need to use for my business. And so this word of mouth, people referring other businesses to me, that started happening, and I started getting more business by people referring me to them than I had with any amount of work I did knocking on doors and trying to sell myself. And so, me being a credible individual, showing absolute integrity and demonstrating my competence, demonstrating um, uh, my intent, my integrity, all of that, it completely saved my business. It completely made it so that I made money. If I had not been that person, if I had chosen to be somebody else, less trustworthy, I would not have had that opportunity. And so for me, it's never worth ever taking some opportunity to make a few more dollars, to make a little bit more money. It is never worth it ever. And being somebody that everybody can trust and rely on is worth way more than that money anyway.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that experience, and that's really what I wanted to get into. Just starting off with this is just the consequences, the positive consequences that happen from trust. And I don't know if you were going to get into this too much, but from the book, The Speed of Trust, there's an example used where the organization, I think it was Franklin R. Covey or somewhere with the organization, but it was like they either doubled or it was like 10x revenue just because the new CEO, his son who came in, just built trust within the organization, and just because other people trusted them, like it's just people flocked to their company, and so there's countless other examples. So I totally am with you that being
Is
honest,
it
it's harder like in the short term, but long
right?
term like you'll get so much more money and so much more wealth and profitability.
Are you referring to the story where he took away the time clock?
I'm not sure. I haven't
Yeah.
gone that far.
Well, regardless of what the story is, you're absolutely right. Right. And the opposite of trust is suspicion.
Hmm.
If they don't trust you, they suspect you, or they will they either trust you or they suspect you of maybe not being that great. And so the opposite of trust is suspicion. And so I don't want to be a suspicious guy. I want to be a trustworthy person. And so I want everybody. I want my family. I want the people I work for. I want my coworkers. I want my boss. I want my customers. All of them. When they say my name, they can say it with confidence, and they say it with an absolute conviction in my integrity and trust.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, from what I know about you, that's definitely the way that I picture you and many others. So
Yeah,
you've
thank
done a
you.
great job with that. So can you jump back into what you were talking about earlier about like the four areas of trust that
Oh yeah,
we can work on?
yeah. The four areas of trust. So these four areas are the core competencies of trust, or the core areas of trust, and that is starts with integrity. Integrity is those are your personal beliefs. That is your behavior, your deep honesty, uh, your humility and courage. Think of all those things. It's who you are at the very deepest core, in the darkest corners. Um, and I like to think of the humility and courage. I like the combination of humility and courage, where I'm humble. I want to be humble, but I want to be really courageous at the same time. I really think that that's a really delicious blend of personality. So integrity is one of the primary cores. Your intent. What is it that you mean? What is your agenda? Do you have a crooked agenda? Do you have I like the Covey Institute, the way they talk about seeking mutual benefit. If I'm seeking to work, am I looking out for the interests of the people that I'm working for as much as I'm looking out for my own interests? That is my intent. If I am, and if they can feel that, if they sense that I'm looking out for their interests as much as my own, that builds trust. So that is a very important quality and a component to having trust. So your intention, what is your intent? But it's not all about the integrity intent, right? It's about looking at the hard values or the tangible values. It's your capability. So your capability as an individual. So whatever it is that you decide to do. For me, I'm a cybersecurity professional. So I have to be able to prove that I can do the work, that I have put in the time to educate myself, however that is, that I know how to do it. I have experience doing it. Um, and that you can count on me to be able to do it. So if I'm really capable and I'm really smart at the work I do, my intent is wrong, or I don't have very good integrity. You see how that's wrong. It's those two have to be there. Those two or three things have to be there. And then, of course, the fourth part is your results. What is your track record? And what is it that you have done that we can now look at and see if to compare against the alternative. And so, if I've shown that yes, I've done this work, and look what I've done over here, that is the other part of it. So, what that does is it builds an anticipation. If you can see what I've done in my past, now you can anticipate that that will be what I will do in the future. And so, if you take those four areas, the integrity, intent, the capabilities of an individual, and then the results, you take those four things, that is the absolute trust. That's when you can fully trust somebody if they possess those four things. You take one of those away, and trust goes down, and you lose trust. You lose the ability for people to trust you. Um, but at the same time, I don't think we've talked a lot of much about you taking the same opportunity and extending trust to somebody else, which is also a trustworthy attribute of extending trust. So I don't know. I went through that really, really quick, but I wanted to make sure that those four areas, those core areas, were really important. There is, there is, it's really difficult to gain trust. Super easy to lose it. Really easy to lose trust. It's not worth, it's not worth compromising any of these values, any of these principles for a quick opportunity or an easy opportunity. It's not worth it because you will lose trust with people, and it will be extremely difficult to build that back.
Yeah, and we've definitely seen that in recent years. I'm trying to remember some of the examples they use, but it's like as soon as companies were audited and they found that these companies were like doing just untrustworthy things or just running their numbers wrong, it's like numbers wrong. It's like they just went downhill from there because they lost the support of investors, of customers, and everyone. So it's just it's so true. Just how easy trust can be lost and how hard it is to regain it after trust has been broken.
Yeah, it's
That's
very, very difficult, and in some cases, it's impossible. So it's not worth it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we just got a question from Abraham, and also Abraham, I'd like to actually ask your question later, but I believe this was Jabba who asked this. Jabba he's been a stellar member of the program so far. He's really been just diving into stuff if we've ever needed stuff done. So what he asked is, how do you overcome the failure in a business environment, and also how can we build our speed of trust? And so I think, Job, if I'm understanding this right, uh, yeah, how do you overcome that fear of failure, and then what are like some practical steps that we can all take to build our trust or build like the speed of trust?
Is the question how to overcome the fear of failure or to overcome the failure?
Uh, Overcome the fear of failure.
Oh, overcome the fear of failure. That's tough. That's really hard to answer. You have got to just work. You've got to just get to work, because if you don't work, you're going to sit there. If you're not working, you're going to just be thinking, and you're going to be all you'll do is spend all your time thinking about the fear, think about the possibility of failure, thinking about the rejection and the things not going well. And so the only thing I can say to that, and the only thing that I have done or experienced personally in my life, because I promise you, the fear, I had tons of fear. I was scared to death. Um, and I thought about it a lot, especially at night when I wasn't working. For me, My recommendation is you just got to get busy. You've got to start working and work hard. I would say, this may not make a lot of sense, but the other thing that I would highly recommend is, in addition to the work that you do for your business and as an entrepreneur, find an opportunity to mix in there serving somebody else. Give something back to somebody that you don't expect anything back from them. There's there's power in that. There's psychological power and emotional power behind that. And for me, I did that because I was challenged to do it by somebody who I knew who was a successful businessman, and he challenged me to find opportunities to serve or to give either my time or money. I didn't have money, but he said, time or money, give that, and that I would find peace and I would find the ability to keep working. And you know what? It actually worked, because I actually did do that, where I found opportunities to give and to provide. And I found that, quite honestly, with the work I was doing. So the same work I was doing to try to make money, I would find opportunities to serve an individual or an entity, a business, and give them something that I didn't expect in return. And one example was helping an elementary school, a school for young children, where I helped them with some technical work, and I did it for free. And I did it because I wanted to help. And it just really gave me a sense of accomplishment. It gave me a sense of value, a sense of goodwill. And I feel like that I was blessed in many, many ways, for doing that. But that helped me to overcome. It helped me to keep myself distracted, and it helped me to build confidence, which helped me to fight the fear. And that's what it did for me. But I would just recommend, work hard, stay busy, um, doing what you're doing, but also give back a little bit.
Yeah, and if I could just echo what you said, we actually had a discussion about this a few days ago, uh, just about how the energy, you only have so much energy and focus throughout the day. And so if all of your energy and focus is going into fear, like you're just letting fear consume that, then you're right. Like, sorry, your thoughts about fear are going to overtake you, and that's exactly what's going to happen. You just let the fear be there enough to be like, okay, I need to be aware of this. I need to be aware that if I don't, get this business going, I won't be able to provide for my family. If you just let that just kind of like be in the back burner, then focus all of your energy and your focus on results and action, then that's really where
Right.
miracles can happen. So
Yep. I agree with that.
yeah. Okay, so we just had another. So Abraham, I'd like to answer your question now. So Abraham is getting into email marketing. He's a Liberian refugee and he's just really ambitious right now. So what he
Good.
said is, I would need to understand more. You mentioned fear of rejection, fear of not having enough money, but you said those same fears drove you to move forward. How did those fears drive you, and how did it really work?
Well, because I was afraid of not making enough money, and because I was afraid of being rejected or not having the work, um, for me personally, you have to make a decision. You're either going to just stop, don't do it, don't do anything, or stand up and dig your heels in and get working and work hard, and let the fear of the failure push you to really work hard to stay away from it, to put distance between yourself and the failure, whatever that is. So it really becomes, number one, it becomes a choice. You have to decide whether you're going to let it happen or not. And so hopefully you decide that you're going to work hard, and you're not going to let the fear overcome you or cripple you, where you cannot do anything, and you're so concerned about the fear that you're not able to move forward, or you choose not to. So I would decide that first, make a decision. But after that, it's always knowing that there is a possibility of failure. Let that push you and drive you to wake up a little bit earlier, to read a few more books, to to knock on a few more doors, to reach out to a few more people. Whatever it is that your task list is, whatever it is that you need to do to succeed, do that, add a few more things to it. So work harder is what I'm saying. If for you, you need to understand more, or to get more information, then that should drive you to seek that knowledge, and to learn that information. If it's about going out and knocking on doors, then get up a little bit earlier and knock on a few more doors. But it's really about letting that be an accelerant. But it starts with a choice. It starts with a decision you make that you're not going to let it happen. Even though the decision alone doesn't fix it, but deciding that you're going to work hard and you're not going to let it stop you. It starts with that, and then it takes action, 100% action, and going out there. And if I might say, it takes a little faith, and just believing that you can do it, and just trusting in yourself. We talk about trust. We talk about trusting others or people trusting you. You need to trust yourself as well, and having a little faith, having some trust in yourself, that while you think to yourself, like for me, I thought to myself, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. I have no idea how it's going to work. I don't know if it will work, but I'm going to bleed if I have to make sure it does. And just get out there and push as hard as you can and drive as hard as you can. And it all starts with that one choice, a
Wow,
decision.
that's powerful. That's powerful. Well, I think that very well answers that question. Uh, yeah, just that's amazing what you've been able to do just through fear. I didn't realize I could be such an amazing driver, but like you said, just put in more effort. So we had just had a question from Jerry Corboy. He is actually the region director for this group. Uh, as we're doing a lot, he's been an amazing leader in helping others. And so
Good.
what he asked is it possible to regain trust from customers after they realize you're not being honest? And
Oh,
if I could actually break that into two questions, because I'd be curious to know your response to both. Uh, Maybe one like they realize that you're dishonest, and maybe one like they realize that you just weren't performing well. And if I could just say something real quick about the not performing well, there's actually a story. I'm not sure if it was in the Speed of Trust, but it was a story of this lawyer who was just starting up his own practice, and he did some work for some people, and they just weren't happy with the results. They were actually really irritated, and so he actually hand delivered like a refund back to them. He gave their money back, and he said like this wasn't in the agreement. Like I could have still taken this money, but it's not worth it to me. So here you go. And he was devastated. He really stressed out because he didn't have any money coming in. But what happened next was that these people realized, oh wow, like this is a lawyer I can trust, and so they started referring him. And within a few months, he started up his own like successful practice because people just kept referring him. Anyways, so yeah, what are your thoughts though about being dishonest and then also just customers going away because you didn't get the results?
right. Well, the part about being dishonest, that's the easiest one to answer, because if you're dishonest and they discover that you're dishonest, they find out that you lied or that you weren't truthful, in whatever way. It is possible, but not for everybody. At that point, it's completely, not 100%, but a lot of it is out of your hands. It's up to them whether they're going to whether they'll trust you again. You can work really hard to regain the trust. If they choose not to, that's their choice. But think about how much work you would have to put in. If you flip the coin and think about what would it take for somebody that you trusted and then found out you couldn't trust them anymore, they lied to you, what would it take for you to regain the trust that you once had, where you fully felt like that they were a credible individual? It would take an enormous lot of work and a long time to do it. So it is possible, absolutely. But the amount of work that you would have to do and the integrity that you'd have to show would take so much energy. It would take so many resources. It would take sometimes years to recover. So if you compare that to what it costs for you just to be honest in the first place, it costs way less money for you to just be honest all the time. So, but anyway, the cost of regaining that is, I've heard stories like you, Mike. I've heard other stories of people that have lost trust because of some financial transactions, and they tried to regain it. And I'll be honest with you, one story is about a mother and a son. And without the story would take too long to tell, but there was some trust lost between the mother and son. And it took the mother about 13 years to regain the trust in her son. 13 years because of some things that he had done financially that hurt her. And so, even a mother, someone who loves her son unconditionally, it still took a very long time to do that. So, anyway, that's how I'd answer that question. I'm not sure that that answered it to satisfaction, but the answer is yes, you can regain it, but you're going to spend an enormous amount of time, an enormous amount of resource to do it. Regaining trust on a competency or a capability of some sort, I think that that might be a little bit easier because if there wasn't a trust, the trust around integrity and intent, basically, that is your character, right? That is who you are at your core belief, which is about the lying, which we just talked about. Versus if you have that, but maybe you're not competent in the work that you do, and that gets discovered, that would be a lot easier to recover from. But you would still have to work hard at doing it. But you'd have to show and demonstrate that you gained the competency and that you can be trusted. But it still would take a while for someone to fully trust that. And so when it comes to the trust of around a competency or a capability, it's always just smarter to in the very beginning to say I can do this, but there are some areas here where for me I'm going to have to learn a little bit, but I'm happy to put in the time to do that. If that is presented up front, if people know exactly where you're at, and so for me this really relates well in the field that I'm in because I work in the technical field around cybersecurity. And when I'm working, there are areas where I'm really good, and there are areas where I don't know very much. But somebody that doesn't know cybersecurity at all, and they're putting the trust in a person like me, it makes sense for me to make sure that they know that where my competencies are. But one of my competencies is being able to discover and to learn quickly. That's something that I'm able to do, especially since I have a wealth of knowledge and building that up. And so when I have an opportunity or when there's any question at all, I always make sure that they understand that. They understand that there's an area, say, well, this area right here, I'm going to have to go out and using words I probably wouldn't use, but basically let them know I'm going to have to go out and learn a little bit more about this, but I can do this, and this area might take me a little bit longer. And I'm not going to charge you for the time I'm going to take to learn about that, but I'll get it done, and it'll be done right. And then, so that's up front, and they think, okay, great, that's fine. Now, this is where the results comes in. Remember I talked about results. If I do that, and I do a good job on everything I promised, and then there's one section where I'm going to have to learn a little bit, I do that, I learn it, and I do it. And the results are that it worked out exactly the way I promised it. Even though I had to learn and I didn't have a full competency, that trust is intact and it's maintained because the results, because I was forthcoming in where I was, and the results that I produced are exactly what I promised that I would produce. And so it's just smart to let people know if you need to, if it makes sense for it, that you'll get the job done. Sometimes just saying, if they say, can you do this? You say, I can do that. And then you just make sure you do, regardless of how you had to do it. That's good enough, as long as you're not selling yourself as something that really isn't. But the results part of that is really important. But anyway, I took a very long time to answer the one question, and I'm sorry about that. But it is possible to regain trust, but it is incredibly expensive to do so.
Yeah, no, I think that was that was a great response. Uh, I think it even just drives more the point across, just the importance of trust. Because if you can always be trustworthy, like saying the short term, it's always easier to be untrustworthy, but the long term, I think we've all seen people or know people who's honest, and it comes back to
Right,
bite them. And so long term, it's way less expensive and way more
right,
profitable to be trustworthy.
right.
Okay, guys. So once again, if you have any questions, please send them in. We're going to be wrapping up here in about 10 minutes. But yeah, Mike, could you go ahead and just tell us a little bit more about what you do right now as a career, and for those people who want to get into software or even white hat hacking, what is it? Yeah, like what could you tell them about what you do as a career?
Right. Well, so now I have people that work for me where we do all kinds of different things in the cybersecurity world where we are involved with we work with we work with hackers. We hire hackers that are really good at it. I wish I've been to hacking school, and hacking, by the way, is it's kind of a negative term, but in reality, hacking is somebody that knows how to code and knows how to go in and manipulate data. That's really the true definition of a hacker. It doesn't have to have a negative connotation. So I know that you mentioned white hat hacking, which is around working, being good with data, right? But we actually hire and we work with people that come in and they simulate the bad guys, people that don't have good intentions, and they try to break into our system. So we simulate that. So the breadth of work that I do covers all areas of cybersecurity, whether it be the software protection or hardware protection and the network protection and even the protection at the perimeter, the protection internally, the cybersecurity protection. We call it the human firewall, where the education of individuals within an organization and their awareness around security, which is a major weakness around most cybersecurity programs. And so it really covers all areas of cybersecurity. So the work that I do is involved in all the different verticals, all the different areas, whether it be um, cybersecurity tools or cybersecurity principles and policies. Those are all the areas that I manage and that I govern.
That's cool. That's awesome. That sounds like some really I don't know, for me, just really interesting stuff just around like the hacking and how that can be used for good and you know
Yeah,
to prevent the
yeah.
bad. It's really cool. So we actually have some other questions that just came in, and
Okay.
let's see. So Abraham, I just asked another question. He said, "What are some of the services you run as a cybersecurity business, and what are the challenges?"
Sorry, will you repeat the first part of that question, Micah?
What are some of the services that you run as a cybersecurity agency? So like, what do you guys? I think you just listed off most of the stuff. Like, so there's white hat hacking. Is there anything else you guys do for other companies to make them more secure?
Well, it's it's really it's everything. It's about like how do we secure like if you look at an organization, there are lots of layers of security that you have to be aware of at the perimeter. So basically, where the internet, where your organization touches the internet, and the internet is what we call an untrusted environment because we don't know all the people out there. So that becomes a perimeter. So we defend against the perimeter, and that's done through hardware and software tools, but also policies. So these are administrative policies. There's other services, things like the monitoring, where we monitor for anomalous activity and we report on anomalous activity. So if we see something that is happening that doesn't look right, we think that's not normal to this environment, and so we alert on that. And then people that own that area, they look at it and they determine whether, yeah, that's actually us doing some development or doing some work that's not typical, but it's legitimate, or if it isn't legitimate, then we go into an incident response where we shut it down and stop that activity. So basically, it's called incident response or incident management, where we're looking at that type of activity. Um, there's audits that we do and risk assessments where we go in and we look at the entire organization and we analyze every component of their infrastructure or their software, their hardware, their policies, their procedures, the rules and standards that they have. When we look at every single component of that, and then we compare that against what's called a framework or a control. And so when we do that, we're able to say, well, the standard or what it should be is like this, but you're here and it doesn't match. And so what is that gap or what is the problem there? We call it a gap analysis, where we see that there is a big difference between what it should be and what you really are. So we identify all those different areas that need some work, and we take and we summarize that and provide that and say these are the different areas where something needs to be fixed to become more secure or to bolster up the security around that particular thing. And that's called a risk assessment and a gap analysis, where we are able to do that. The work on the other side of that, by the way, is called remediation, and the word remediate is to reduce or to fix, right? And so we then go through a remediation process where those things are driven to become to be fixed, and hopefully they're done in a certain amount of time, and then we have just strengthened that particular organization by X%. So that's another thing that we do. That's probably that's probably the most difficult area of cybersecurity, because there's every single company has tons of problems and lots of gaps and lots of issues they need to work on, but nobody wants to do it, and it's really really hard. It's hard to do that and to get them to fix the problems. That's probably the most difficult thing. Everybody wants to work on and be involved with the exciting, colorful stuff, right? The things that are just I don't know. They're out there in the forefront. They're obvious. They're at the perimeter. They're looking at the actual things that you can see the hacking going on, and you want to see that. You want to stop it. That's the stuff that people are excited about. It's fun, but no one wants to work on the tedious stuff that's internally, which is internal, which is where a lot of the failures happen. So anyway, sorry, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, there's so much more. There's that question. I could go on and on about all the different layers and different things, but there are a lot of different areas of security, a lot of different areas to be worried about. And a lot of things, a lot of different services that we provide, but every one of them have their strengths, every one of them have their priorities, and each one, a good organization is going to put a certain amount of energy into all of it and build a roadmap so that all of these things are addressed in the appropriate time and culture for that particular company. And that's really where the meat is us working with those people to find the right cadence and the right roadmap for their particular company and their particular culture.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that answers it pretty well. I mean, yeah, that's like a question that you could probably spend a year explaining because there's so much that
Yeah,
goes into that. So I think it's a pretty simple example.
right.
So we just had a question come in from Anthony, and he asked, how could one erase a stigma of being untrustful?
The only way to do it is to be trustworthy. The only way to do it is you've got to be able to demonstrate your integrity, your intent. You have to demonstrate your capabilities and the results you get from that. Those core things. And when I say demonstrate, that's the most important part. Changing your mind about it, changing your belief about it, that's one thing, but it has to be demonstrated. You have to show and prove and act out and work hard and let people see that you are now trustworthy, and hopefully wipe away that reputation with either with the individuals or the entities. But the only way to erase it is to act and to demonstrate it outwardly.
Yeah, I think it's going back to what we talked a lot about earlier, that uh, it takes a lot more time, a lot more resources to build trust over time. Like if you break it, and yeah, and it's from
Well,
what I've
that's the
seen in
important,
organizations, like it takes a lot more work to actually build up trust, and then
right.
it takes
And,
like
and,
what?
and part of, exactly, and part of your integrity, part of your reputation will be built on, if you get frustrated that they're not believing you, if you get frustrated that here you're now showing that you're trustworthy, but people still have a hard time, if that frustrates you and you demonstrate frustration, you lose credibility. You have to show patience. You have to show long suffering, that you're willing to put it in and take as much time as it needs to happen to
Hmm.
regain it, or else you're going to lose the trust just by being frustrated about
Yeah, that's a good point too. It's a really good point. Awesome. Well,
it.
Mike, I think that's all the questions for now. So before we wrap up, though, do you have any final words that you would like to share with this group as they're all trying to
Man,
start their own businesses and get
I'm
successful?
excited for you guys. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. It's going to be scary. You probably are already scared. It's going to be difficult. But I hope that every one of you will look at that and say, you know what? I'm excited for the challenge. The challenge of it, the difficulty of it, the fear of it, that in itself is the challenge. And for you to be excited about the challenge and take on the challenge and show your worth, show your value by kicking in and fighting, and don't ever stop swinging your fist. Just punch, 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 and work really, really hard. And if you fail, be okay with that. Be perfectly fine with it. Stand back up and keep punching, and just learn from it. You're going to fail. So just think, what I failed, I made a mistake. What can I learn? And if you'll do that and you'll stand back up and keep fighting and learn from every one of the failures that you experience along the way, and you keep working hard, you will be successful. It will happen. But you've got to be willing to fail, and you've got to be willing to make mistakes and learn from them. And that's, for me, that's the absolute key to all of it. Is not dropping out and running away because you failed, but stomp your foot on the face of that failure and just and keep climbing.
That's awesome. That's really good advice. I love that. Just keep those fists going, guys.
Yep.
Just keep the fists going. Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time. Really, 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 really appreciate the feedback you've given us, especially about
My
just learning about
pleasure.
trust and just how that's changed your life, especially through business and your entrepreneurship. So
My pleasure. Yeah, no problem.
awesome, great. Well, have a good rest of your Friday.
Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you.
Bye bye.